This episode is part of the Meet the Maker series, where we highlight an entrepreneur who is making specialty gear for ice climbers. If you've ever wanted to hear the story behind some of your favorite and soon-to-be favorite products, that's what today's conversation is about. We're doing this because we believe that thoughtfully designed gear is more than the sum of its parts. They are crafted by folks who have decades of experience in the sport, are refined through countless iterations and testing, and brought to life with genuine passion to solve real problems. Said another way, these folks represent the heart and soul of product innovation. On today's mini-episode, we talk with Paul Shaugnessy and Charlie Faust of Beartooth Alpine, who specialize in metal goods made in the US. Driven by an ethos of do not conform, their mission is to produce the best gear possible out of the best materials. Period. Full stop. That's what they do. Their latest release, Specialized Picks, have gotten folks quite excited. Their 2mm tapered Ice Hawk is optimized for minimal displacement and durability, while their Master Scratchers have been hailed as the best ice climbing mixed pick that will actually hold up to the rigors of scratchy terrain. If you're interested in snagging a pair, Paul and Charlie are generously offering a set to listeners. They have picks for all major ice tool models, including the Nomic, Extreme, Hydra, and Dark Machine. Here's how to enter. In today's chat, be on the lookout for the answer to the following question. What is one fundamental difference between their picks and most stock picks on the market? There are a few answers to that question, so feel free to choose as you wish. Once you have the answer, head to the giveaway post on our Instagram for full details about how to submit. And you can also hang around to the end where I share the steps to enter. Winners will be randomly selected from submissions that meet all the rules on Monday, December 2nd. So don't delay in entering. Now for our conversation with Paul and Charlie. Just finished doing an edit for an episode with Bill Belcourt. I thought it worked really well as a segue for today's conversation because so his background is he spent 23 years at Black Diamond, mostly like leading their like metal division. And so he has a lot of patents and work on ice screws and things like that. But he was talking about like the ethos of new products and innovation in climbing and how it's always driven by, the people that are getting after it, and they're doing it for themselves and they want to scratch their own itch, so to speak. And it's driven by this desire to just keep pushing the sport forward through the abilities that can improve with increased technical capacity, right? Like you're doing it for you and your friends. It's really what it comes down to. And what he's really excited about and happy about is, he says, I always find folks that still have the heart and soul and they're still doing it. And they're still, it's the scrappy upstarts that are really going after this innovation and quality and things like that. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to be talking with Paul and Charlie later today. This is awesome. And I'm glad that you guys are a part of this to talk about Beartooth Alpine. And I guess along those lines, like you guys are very deliberate in what you're doing from, the ethos of how you produce your products and what you're making. And even it comes down to like the tagline of do not conform. And I'm wondering if you guys can just sort of maybe start things off with what does that mantra mean in the context of the business for you guys?
The do not conform tagline is like this whole idea of Beartooth stemmed from two things, which is one, a lack of the gear that we wanted in terms of availability, but then also a dissatisfaction with the quality and performance of gear, specifically in the mountains and how well it stood up to mountain abuse. I mean, Paul, I think, went through before he was even climbing on our prototypes, had already gone through like 6 sets of picks or something like that by the time we hit December or like early January. And that's because we're hard on our gear. And so when we thought about developing new equipment and a company that would produce that, first and foremost, we wanted to adhere to a standard of like performance and durability that was straight real world tested. Like you can do all the pull testing in the world, all the bend testing you want. You can do anything in the shop that you want. and you can look at all the numbers and the math and the science behind a certain metal type or whatever, but until it gets into the field and is tested in the harshest terrain and on first ascents, and you're swinging into rock for purchase on a sketchy mix pitch, just desperately trying to get up it alive, then the gear hasn't really been put through the fire. So the whole do not conform ethos really comes from a mindset of we don't put out a single piece of gear until us or our testing team can't find a single thing we want to tweak. Like, it's been on FAs, it's been on expeditions, and we demand that our entire team be as critical as humanly possible. That doesn't mean we're perfect. That doesn't mean there isn't something to improve, but we won't put it out until we can't find anything else. And then from there, the public's the best feedback. I take every email, every review that we get. Paul and I sit down and seriously consider any critique or comment or feedback, and like, hey, we're small, we're mobile, we can make a change to a product in a month.
Yeah, Charlie, I get all that, but like, still at the same time, you have the character with like two middle fingers on it, and it's do not. Like, come on, like, you didn't even touch upon the punk element of it.
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, basically, do not conform is how the particular person makes of it. You know, everybody has a different idea of do not conforming. For me, do not conform is particularly it's art. You know, so for me, it's like, yeah, you know, you see it how you want it, and everything in that state is art. So when you're working with metal and things of that nature, sometimes somebody might not like your way of art, but you know, that's your way of expressing yourself. And it might not be, you know, the punk end of your lifestyle, or you might not have that theme behind you, but for some people it is. For me particularly, it's art and my background, and you know, being a hot rod or rebel type of person, you know, so it's kind of like everything is a craft. I think if you put your mind to it and you have some passion behind it and you build your skill set, you can come up with some cool ideas, you know, and it's all art in a way.
It's about just being who you are and saying, I mean, really, fuck anybody else. I mean, it's about being personal. Like, the brand is who we are. The punk element, like, we're in the shop jamming to hardcore, like, metal music and old school hip hop while we grind picks. There's curse words in our marketing on our website in places that I think they're appropriate, like our bare face logo on our shirt. That product description says this is made in the USA, and we're damn proud of that, because it's hard to do things in the US. It's more expensive, and manufacturing's been shipped out of this country for decades. And so it's just about us being true to ourselves in the brand and wanting everyone else to do the same.
I mean, you guys are going about it the hard way. Just by the fact that you guys are making hard goods in outdoors, you know, in climbing gear, it's a hard way to make a buck, right? I mean, you see a lot of soft good companies coming up, and I think it's probably a little bit cheaper or faster to get going. And so I guess, you know, because who else makes picks in the US? Black Diamond probably, but you're shaking your head. Oh, they don't. Okay.
They don't.
So I don't believe there's any manufacturers. I think, to your point, it's basically, you know, like, we're not getting into soft goods because we don't know soft goods that well. You know, we know metal quite well. We're climbers. We know how to test these things, and we could build what we're building currently quite well. Where it goes, who knows? You know, everything is a roll of the dice, right? We want to see it succeed to the highest level and give people the best gear they can. But, you know, it's the future will tell on that end. But, you know, you put some soul into it, some passion, some craftsmanship, and you tweak and challenge yourself to make it better every time, and trust everybody's opinions and value those from the opinions of people you trust. I think you can come up with some pretty cool products. But it's been pretty cool, because originally it was just going to be a little side gig out of my shop. Charlie was just going to hang out in Montana for a few months a year. We build a little side income gig, handing out some gear to folks, and it's kind of changed into a little bit more than that now. It's moving into, slightly bigger shops and equipment specifically for that. We don't outsource any of our metal goods or anything outside of the country, so I think that's important, for me, particularly with machining background, like a lot of stuff, just the skill set involved is being lost along with the work. So it's not just the work leaving the country. It's the skill set that's being lost as well, which is quite unfortunate. You see a lot less folks wanting to get into it because there's just not as many shops available to do apprenticeships at anymore and things of that nature. So it's something to be proud about. We're definitely not going to have profit margins like if we were to go to China or Vietnam or wherever to source our metal goods. But, there's a sense of pride behind it for sure. We're building it in the area that we climb in.
I want to talk a lot more about the metal and the fabrication and sort of how you're constructing these. And I know we'll get to that, but I want to, before we get to that point, so we don't know where this will end up, but we do know how it got started. And at least according to your website, this came about, the idea for the company came about on a trip to Canada. And so I want to know what the hell happened on that trip. You guys like, we need to make better picks.
I mean, long story short, April 2023, Paul and I went to Canada we're supposed to be there for over a month, and conditions were absolutely terrible from an avalanche danger perspective. Everything we wanted to go for was untouchable, from huge propagation on the approaches to, it was a shame. The weather was amazing, like 3 to 5 days of weather windows a week, unheard of for Canada. And it was just so dangerous. So we were relegated to kind of cragging Alpine stuff and a lot of free time, a lot of gym time, just waiting for hopefully conditions stabilizing out. And I had a dissatisfaction with gear for a long time, whether it was pitons that I could get a hold of, or just burning through like picks, crampons, front points, just having them, break on a route, whatever it was. And with all the free time we had, I knew Paul had the metal fabrication and manufacturing background. And I just kind of asked Paul, I was like, hey, man, can we start making some of this ourselves, even if it's just for us? And Paul's like, yeah, dude, we can 100% take this on. And I was like, well, we need pins. We're out of pins. We need beaks. We need more. We keep leaving them. Like, we're always psyched when we find a lever beak on the route because you have another one. And it just started like that.
That's it's basically all of it in a nutshell. I mean, we even went as far. We had so much spare time, we went even further than that. We were even filling up business paperwork and creating the name in the climbing gym, and then going cragging and talking more, and then drawing shit, and like it was already starting. I think I might have even ordered some test metal and had it shipped to my shop. That way it was there when we got back. The psych was high because we're just basically sitting there, dog shit conditions. Like, we were still psyched because we're out, friends having a fun time together. The weather was good, so we're still able to go out and dry tool and get some good Alpine routes and on some lower hazard objectives. But basically, it ended up being a business trip. But we developed a lot of the idea there, mainly around, let's start building some pitons. All of our friends want these beaks. They're all really shitty. We're losing them. We're leaving them. They're bending, they're breaking, whatever it is, So it's like, that's how the idea started. And then it's like, hey, man, like, you have a media and marketing and like social media background, and it can do websites. Like, I could build the metals. I want nothing to do with that. I could help design, I could create, I could build tooling, but like, it could be a great combination. And that's kind of where it's ended up, because for me, it's like, I wouldn't want to tackle this as a sole person. You need different talents in different areas, and it just keeps the psych high and keeps the business growing in the proper way, you know, and we'll gain other talents in other areas too when we grow. But I think for right now, like for what we have, we're producing pretty cool products for what we have as a team right now.
I even have still one of the original drawings from Canada
Look at
sitting
that.
around.
Yeah.
This is what we were doing, sitting in the climbing gym,
Pull it
drinking
back.
lattes.
If you could pull it back a little, Charlie, because we can't, and center it.
Yeah, for the listeners, I mean, it doesn't look that different than what you have, right? What you produced.
No,
it's pretty close.
That's impressive.
There's some size tweaks and some teeth changes. But yeah, lattes and hangboarding and this while conditions are bad. That's how it came
Well,
about.
all good ventures have a great origin story. You think of Rome as an example.
right.
So you guys started with what you just showed, which was your beak. So I'm curious. Like, I imagine like that's an easier to market product than maybe starting with picks. But what was your progression and rationale for starting with the beak, and then like what did you learn from that allowed you to start building picks?
So in particular, the beaks is how it all started. The picks were in the background. We knew we wanted to create them, but it's like, what can we start now where we can learn these metals, test in the mountains and see how it works. So we started with beaks. We knew what we wanted with the design. We knew naturally that picks were coming next, but we wanted to perfect our line of beaks, you know, the size range, the thicknesses, and how they were created. So that allowed us to enter into how we're going to grind the tapers and how we're going to do our cutting and things of that nature. So we learned a lot as far as that goes, how to produce, because at the end of the day, this is all kind of like knife making, right? We're building blades. So a lot of the things that go into particularly making a piton, we use the same process for doing the taper on our pick. So same tooling and things of that nature. The pitons are actually an easier fabrication from a manufacturing standpoint because you don't have the beveling and the edges, the sharp edges to do. Our picks, all of them get hand touched up in the end to give them that final sharpness and that final inspection. So it's perfect when you get it. So the beaks really taught us a lot, and that I think. The beaks allowed us to see where the market was for them, and it gave us kind of a little bump to start the picks. You know what I'm saying? So the other thing that was involved is we tested many different types of metals, and we're cutting different metals and testing them to see what metal's going to work correctly to where we ended up with the stuff that we're using now on the picks that we're really not mentioning, but it's what we've tested and come up with as far as the best solution for picks in the mountains for what we're looking for as far as durability and flexibility and all the things you want in that type of gear. Yeah, the pitons were basically a stepping stone and basically a brand starter. You know, it started our brand. A lot of our hardcore followers right off the gate supported us, you know. We love all those folks, you know. It's like they trusted us, and now it's like they use our gear strictly. So it's really cool to see. But I believe the market for picks is bigger than the piton market because we're not just building these picks for hardcore climbers. We'd like everybody the entry level climber all the way up to the expert climber to be able to use these and take advantage of how well they work.
I mean, from a brand perspective, it was a good move too.
Smart approach.
Because we had for a full year, people got to use pieces of equipment that we're making and learning to trust them and being like, hey, these guys are dedicated to making something that's different and something that's better. And if this product that was easier for us to make can start building some of that brand trust and trust in what Paul and I can do, I think that set us up really well for people to be psyched on the picks that we're making. And pitons aren't being left behind either. It's like it's like a stepping stone from a manufacturing company standpoint. But I mean, we have 2 new prototypes on folks' racks right now. And it's like, there's so much more that we want to do with that. So it's not like a stepping stone, like, oh, that's done now, you know?
Right.
We're still making more of those
Yeah.
things.
The ideas you see, online and what you see, I mean, we have 10 more that you don't see, interestingly enough, that are really neat and unique, and you'll look at it and be like, wow, I haven't seen that before. So we're testing things and try to take things to the next level as much as we can with flat steel.
I mean, the beauty of being at this size and then having, your tight knit community is that the feedback loop is really rapid, right? Like, you guys are users, your friends are users, and you're getting a ton of feedback. And I mean, that must be so exciting, just because you're just constantly innovating and trying new things, and you have the capacity to tinker really fast. Um, I'm wondering what kind of tinkering you've done with metal. I know you're not going to divulge all the secrets, but maybe can you talk a little bit more about, what you're looking for in the metals that you've chosen and things like that, and sort of, yeah, like sort of more of the technical design decisions behind these pieces.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead, Charlie.
It kind of ties back into something I said earlier with you can test all you want in the shop and read all the specs of a certain metal type and what its ratings are for various properties, and that's great until you swing it into rock. And generally speaking, for picks, we wanted a few factors. We wanted the best wear resistance we could get for longevity, and like make sure people get the most out of their money that they possibly can and that they hold up to mountain abuse. You want flexibility. We're an Alpine equipment brand, and we take that seriously. Like, catastrophic failures in the field, aka a break and not a bend, are unacceptable. So it needs to be flexible and bend before it breaks. Period. And even better, you can, if you do bend it, you can fix it with enough confidence that it's going to keep performing to get you up or off of that mountain. And then you need rigidity to go thin. I mean, the best way to make picks, first and foremost, go into ice better is to make them thinner, because they cut through better and they displace less ice. So, I mean, those three factors were what we were looking for in metal. And there's a lot of science behind what gives metal those properties. What alloys are in it, what's its hardness, all these different things. And we can debate all day what's better or best about different metals in the industry. And then in the end, it doesn't actually matter until it goes into the field. And in our testing, in all our athletes' testing, we found something that hit those marks the best that we have found, which was the most durability we've ever, like a 2.5 millimeter mix pick that has more durability than 3 millimeter picks or 3.2 millimeter picks. And a metal that, although we're selling a 2 millimeter ice pick right now, Paul and I have climbed on 1s and 1.5s for a lot of time and are really trying to push how thin we can really go and still make something that lasts and performs well in the mountains and that you can rely on. And that's really what it's about. And that's what we were looking for. And that's why we use what we use now.
At the end of the day, another part of our criteria was offer something to the customer where they get a little more longevity out of it. Instead of, for me, like, I go through a ton of picks in the ice season on mixed terrain. All of us do, so we're going through 3 to 5 sets of seasons. It's a bit ridiculous. Like, if you're going through 1 to 2 sets, so giving the customer a product that they can get twice the life out of and more performance.
Wait, with 1 millimeter picks, you're not like shearing through the ice, like you can get enough purchase for.
Yeah, basically, in a nutshell, a 1 millimeter pick, you're not trying. You could basically scratch your way up proper quality ice, So unless you're talking like slush, crappy ice, you're not slicing. They're very dynamic. They make a different sound when they hit the ice. They're very unique. Let's put it that way. It's a specialist tool. So, but they're very cool to climb on pure ice. Very cool.
I mean, it's a very different approach to sort of stock picks from the bigger brands. Maybe potentially with the exception of Gravel. And you can say I don't want to answer this question, but what are your opinions on stock brand picks that are out there? Is it just another like planned obsolescence, like the iPhone? It's just a way to get the customer to come back.
Well,
I mean, we can. So, I mean, I could go through every company, both Paul and I could, and tell you what we like and what we don't like about each of their things. But like calling companies out for good or bad probably isn't the point of the question. But I mean, what I will say is that the big companies make good gear. Like it's not about like good or bad. When your company gets big enough and you're doing worldwide retail sales, especially, you have to make gear at a certain margin level and at a certain quality level that it can be mass produced, period. And especially with retail margins all around the world, it has to be affordable. And if you're not making your own equipment and you're outsourcing processes, you are limited by what materials and quality of your processes you can get at those locations. Like you can get different metal in the US than you can in Europe, that you can in Asia, etc. So I think with all aftermarket companies that are making quote like better versions of a big company's product, it really just comes down to what are you capable of doing? I mean, these manufacturers have also set up big manufacturing facilities to do what they are doing. For them to switch over to using a different metal that's a lot harder to work with, their machinery may not even be able to handle it, right? So the difference is being able to micro focus on quality and performance, and you're just going to get a better product out of that. And it's not like a knock on them. Like there are companies that make what I would think of as the standard. Like all the props to Gravel, I think they have probably from a straight metal quality standpoint, some of the better OE like stock metal. Petzl Pure Ice Pick it has been my go-to pure ice pick until we started making picks. Like I can tip my hat to the big companies and all the innovation and decades of research they've put in because we're building off of that. It's not like we're calling everyone out, but being big limits you in what you can achieve in a final product.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie nailed it on the head there. It gets down to they're doing the best they can with the sources they have that they're outsourcing for their metals and all that. So we all know they're being done outside of the country. They have certain metals and goods they can use over there to create the product, to create their profit margin, to have a pick that will be as good as it needs to be for the market, and like Charlie said, we give them props because we've taken a lot. Our first testing, or all of our testing, started with stock picks. What do these do? Were they performing the best? Were they not performing? How's the metal wearing? That gave us a baseline to go by. So, and a lot of other engineering things that you got to work a lot to get there. So we were able to get a little jump start, and basically build off of that, reverse engineer a little bit. And go from there. So yeah, I mean, nothing they're doing is wrong. It's just we're a microbrewery. We're not a huge brewery. We're just putting out a good small product. So we're able to source the best materials. It's like, I look at it like a chef. Like if you're a good chef, you're able to go out and source all your materials yourself and build a quality meal. Like that's what we're doing with picks.
Well, there's good and there's bad out there. And like that, anything more than that is just calling like a specific company out for like, hey, your product's like bad. But like we took elements from we've tested as many picks as we can on the market. And we took little pieces like, hey, this person's reverse curve. Why is Petzl's underbelly reverse curve more aggressive than, let's say Gravel's? Like, we don't know why, so let's test and find what's the difference. And okay, now what's ours going to be? And what happens when you change that?
Right.
Like that, if we didn't have stock picks as a baseline, I mean, it's also the only reason we have a base, right? We don't make tools.
Yeah.
Thanks to all the companies for making the tools that we can make picks for.
Right.
Yeah. I was trying to stir the pot, but only a little bit. I understand where you guys are coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically like how it worked. We took the stock picks, tested them, and then with my machining background, we went to aluminum and we modeled everything, basically machined all the picks as a one-off out of aluminum. And then we were able to test those angles in real life, real form without just looking at a CAD program on a screen. So it's a pretty important process to developing the proper angles. So we won't go into it too much deeper of the process itself, but it's that's kind of how we do it. So we tweak a lot. We try to just reverse engineer, test, tweak, alter, get everybody's opinion. The way it should be done.
When we get into talking specifically about the picks, like there are some trends we noticed in the industry across testing all these different picks and what is similar about them. And those were some of the things that we changed that resulted in better performance. Um, and we've also broken every pick from a stock manufacturer. And so we know where those break and what the differences are. Hats off to Gravel. Your metal's really hard to drill into. Really hard to drill into.
I mean, it's very apparent that you guys are have at least an engineering understanding or background. Like you're being able to diagnose and deconstruct and sort of make your own unique alterations. But what is your background that gives you this ability to sort of like just hit the ground running?
For me, my background is directly involved in one-off metal goods. For the past 20 years, basically my job has been like, I have this product, nobody can make it. Can you do it? So it goes from pattern making to mold making to machining, tooling to create a certain part. So that background allows me to kind of develop prototypes on a like very quickly. Okay, I could model and shape and sculpt prototypes fast. So that background has given me the skill set to do that. Mainly in the automotive and aerospace industry is basically where my background is. Shaping metal, machining parts, creating dies for all different types of substrates. So lots of welding, lots of testing, working with different types of metals. Different metals that have to go through different processes of hardening and annealing and tempering and different coatings. Many years along with, these industries, you have to become very masterful at coatings and technologies and what's up to date for those types of things too, to use on your products. So, all that comes into play when you're trying to do a little manufacturing business. It all kind of is, they come hand in hand. One process is it's the stepbrother to the next product you make. It's just you got to alter things a little bit. So that's my career in a nutshell without explaining exact things.
I like to say that Paul's the only reason that we can make the gear that we're making, and I'm the reason that we can sell it. My background's business. Specifically, I went to school for University of Georgia for economics and international business. Did a short stint in Shanghai, China, close to the finish of college, working in marketing and just navigating that corporate world. And I ran from it pretty hard after a few months stint. Had offers to stay, and that was going to be my life as an expat. And ran from it and kind of sold everything I owned and moved across the country from Georgia, where I grew up, to Colorado to become a climber. And worked as a bartender, mountain guide for 6 years before kind of this whole thing. But really, I think what is most important for Beartooth in terms of like what's our background like why can we do what we do? And it's both of us have a background that is rooted in an incredibly high level of critique and judgment on our work. Like Paul and I are absolutely anal retentive about our own like climbing performance, about our gear that we make. We're hyper analytical about every little detail. I mean, if I notice something on a pick that's like a quarter mil difference, like Paul and I can notice that. And it's because we spend so much time with it. And really, to make this gear, that's all it takes. Is you first have to have a dissatisfaction with something, and then you have to really critically look at it and think slightly outside the box about, hey, why is this being done this way? Can it be done a better way? And then you have to judge yourself really hard. Be like, are you actually on the right track? Is this actually better? And that's when you bring in a really good team and crew of friends that you tell, like, hey, I know I've worked with other brands at different times testing gear, and I've usually felt like my feedback has fallen on deaf ears, or it's like, oh yeah, sure, we can improve that, but nah. And the first thing whenever we've had a sit down with someone we've thought about bringing onto our team is, of like, first and foremost, I need you to tell me what's wrong every time. I need you to always feel open to coming to the littlest of things that you think could be improved, because otherwise you're not a great fit for our athlete team. It's cool if you tell us it's good. That's great. And we want it to be good, but that's not feedback.
Let's not keep people waiting. I know that you guys are chomping at the bit to talk about the picks, and I'd love to dive into that. So yeah, you just released two new options, the Ice Scratcher and, well, oh my gosh, the Ice Hawk and the Master Scratcher. I will let you guys run with this, but yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about what you guys have just unveiled.
I like to say that we make very purpose-driven gear. And I think that is most exemplified by both of these picks, especially the Master Scratcher. One of the biggest challenges in my climbing history, and I think most people's winter climbing history, is what pick do you use for mixed climbing? Because you want a pick that's durable and climbs rock well. But that usually doesn't mean it climbs ice well. I know the majority of my friends in our community, especially if you run a Petzl pick or a Petzl tool, we all use Petzl Pure Ice picks for mixed climbing because it climbs ice better. And when you're climbing rock, you usually get gear, cams, bolts, pins, whatever. And then you latch that hanging smear dagger, and you're on a pick that doesn't climb ice well, and you're scared out of your mind because now you really don't want to fall. So it was a really big thing for us to tackle, making a pick that climbs ice practically as well as a pure ice pick, or better from at least what's available on the market, but still can handle the abuse of alpine climbing. And I don't think that has been accomplished to its full extent until now. And then the Ice Hawk, well, what's the point of a pure ice pick? Climb ice easier, make it go in easier, displace less ice, remove easier, make you swing less. And that's when we started going through testing. We made a pure ice pick first, and we dialed that shape in. And once we were happy with that, the next step was let's just test this on rock and see how it does. What do we need to change now? And it was really surprising, because we started using our ice picks on mixed climbing, and it was our favorite picks that we'd ever used. And we were both surprised, and the more we thought about it and the more we analyzed it, it became unsurprising. And this is maybe what separates, generally speaking, our picks from other picks in the market. And most picks on tools have a fairly steep angle from the head of the tool to the end of the pick. It points downward quite a lot. And then there's also a sharp angle on the nose of the pick, where the blade meets the tip and goes down towards the point. That angle is also pretty steep. From our testing, this is an assumption based off of our testing, to be clear, but I'm assuming everyone does that because it gives you really good placement security. When you swing down into ice, you have a pick pointing down, and that sharp point is pointing backwards towards you, really biting in and holding the pick in. It's also probably the reason that when you overdrive a pick, it gets really stuck because you literally have metal pointing in the wrong direction for removal. Our first thing when making an ice pick that we noticed, I know a lot of people have swung through thin ice early season and hit rock. And folks have probably noticed that when you do that, a lot of times the tip of your pick isn't what is damaged, it's the nose. And that's because the point of the pick, the actual sharp tip, on most manufacturers does not hit the ice first. And that has to do with these steep angles and how they get strong purchase in the ice. You'd never stab somebody with the non-pointy side of the knife. So the first thing we did for our ice pick was make that angle less steep so that the point hit the ice first. And then you get into the details of making it thinner both vertically and horizontally, dialing in the tooth dimensions, what's the underbelly curve, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, getting the same level of security in ice pick, same security in ice pick placements, but having them both go in and remove easier. And that angle change is one of the fundamental differences of our picks, both for the Ice Hawk and the Master Scratcher. And while that made sense for ice, everyone's mix pick is even more aggressive than their ice pick. And the steeper you make a pick, the steeper the terrain gets, the more comfortable the hanging position is in, right? It makes it closer to a pull-up bar, so it's more ergonomic. But the fact is, unless you're doing hard dry tooling, that steep pick for hooking out figure fours and stuff makes mix placements less secure. When you hook onto a rock edge with a steep pick, the pick is pointing down onto the hold. When you go into second position and your handle rotates slightly out from the ice, that point levers up, which makes it skate off. That's when we've all had tools pop mix climbing or thin ice climbing too. You go into second position on really thin ice smears, and they pop out or shear out. By decreasing the angles of the pick, along with everything else, the pick hooks over rock holds, more like a sloper in terms of like leaning over it. So as you go into second position or you're in first position, there's a lot more contact with the rock, which makes it far more secure. And it also makes them last longer because you don't have this really focused wear on the tip of the pick. And I mean, we climbed on our ice design and testing before kind of finalizing the mix up to like M10 or 11. It climbed the comp tower in Uray. Like we really tried it on some steep, hard terrain outside of figure four climbing because that wasn't the point. Making a mix pick was about making a pick that dominates in the mountains and climbs mountain mix really well. And that was the result. And then how can we make the rest of the pick super functional? Because the top mohawk and the under mohawk on most picks seem decorative. They don't actually help you hold purchase. I've always bought ice tools with like the POLA spike for snow climbing, even if I don't use it for Alpine, because if I'm walking on rambly front point ice or whatever between pitches, I want something to cane with for stability, because the top mohawks don't work on normal picks. They just skate away. So we tested 3 or 4 different shapes to get what we have now of a top and bottom mohawk that both work really well as a functional cane on front pointing ice, Stein really well, and the bottom mohawk is for stability in snice. And we all hate that rattly, picked out ice where your tools are kind of floating around and moving. That bottom mohawk bites in really well and provides stability. And then for moving, like hooking daggers or moving around pillars or corners for funky ice, you can really hook well in that curtain and feel like your tool's not going to skate away. That's kind of the fundamental idea behind the picks in what like the broad strokes of what was changed.
Yeah, Charlie hit the fundamentals perfect. A little backstory: Charlie and I were at the Ice Fest with our prototypes, and we had handed off another series of prototypes to a couple close friends of our, Adrian Costa and Noah McKelvin. And we headed off to the Ice Fest, and Charlie and I, and because we had a booth and we were, debuting our pitons at the first Ice Fest and selling some stuff, and we wanted to test our picks in the park. So we get there and we're testing our picks, and we're like, wow, these things are amazing. And we get out of the day there from the fest, and we call up Noah and Adrian. We're like, hey man, so what's the feedback? What are these picks about? Like, because they were doing a pretty tenuous, thin dry tool route and highlight a new FA. And ironically enough, they're like, man, don't change nothing. These things are the best we ever used. We couldn't have done this route without any other pick. We're like, what the heck? So at the end of the day, Adrian and Noah, they named that route the Master Scratcher because of the technical skill it took, and its tenuous, very very clean highlight route that hadn't been put up yet. They did it ground up, bolted it, and Charlie and I decided, like that was the first route that the prototypes did. What's a fitting name and a fun thing and a do not conform that. So we named our mix pick the Master Scratcher, in tribute to the FA that was put up on the prototypes the first time they were ever used.
Again, that speaks to your just commitment and integration with the community. That's awesome. We talked about your first two products, rave reviews so far, but you guys are really new. I mean, there's been a lot that's been going on behind the scenes, but you're passionate about this. It sounds like you have big plans and bigger plans as you've gotten strong reception. So what does the future look like for you guys?
The future for us just looks like business as usual. Keep building prototypes, keep thinking, keep climbing and testing gear, and really analyze the hard good market of what is needed to where we can prototype, make and manufacture and actually make a profit, and keep it alive. So there is that aspect to it too. You could build a bunch of cool things. I can come with, a million cool ideas that won't make you nothing, So we're really analyzing what we can do and how we can do it to actually answer that question properly. But yes, we do have, up to 10 more ideas of things we want to do. A few of them in the works now, but just like anything, you need capital to move forward on certain big ideas. So like we're using things as stepping stones, and we're in no rush. Like I said, this was originally going to be just a side gig out of a shop on my property, and so we're just going to let it roll out and, try to keep our overhead as low as possible, and just keep rolling out cool ideas.
Yeah. Everything we make is based off of the support we get. If we sell enough, then the new products are going to keep coming out. The next, I'll go ahead and I'll reveal the next project we would love to work on and have been working on are front points and crampons. Like that's the logical next step for us, and we have a lot of great ideas for them. And as long as we get enough support with the picks to raise the funds for it, then it's coming. Just give us some time.
You said front points and crampons, or front points for crampons?
Yes.
And crampons.
Interesting.
Yeah, and because front points are a lot easier to make than the whole crampon.
Yeah, the front prototypes will be being used by the athlete team by January, so that should be a no-brainer. But we're like Charlie said, we're looking into taking it a bit deeper than that and potentially offering a new crampon on the market.
Very cool.
It's all if we have the money to do it.
You got to keep the dreams big,
Next is Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Will you guys be doing like a crowdfunding campaign, do you think, or just kind of keep it just funded by customers?
We've discussed it a lot. Like it is the not cheap. It is the quote unquote easier ticket, right? Like we could announce, hey, we've got a crampon we want to make. Let's raise whatever, 60, $50, $100,000. But like we had people trying to buy our picks all summer, since we had people trying to buy our first prototypes at last season's ice festivals. And we're like, no, we don't want your money. Anybody that tried to order from us over the summer refused to take their money. We won't take people's money unless we know we can deliver what we think is the best product on the market. If we don't think it's the best, it doesn't get released. So for us to take people's money early before we have something that we're really psyched on and know that we can deliver on what is our core promise and business model, I don't know if it's just hard. Like, I don't want to take people's money and then something come up. Like, I mean, who knows? A death in the family could take us away for months, or one of us could get killed in the mountains climbing. And what happens at that point? So we prefer to do this organically and grow very naturally. Like the money we invested a certain amount into pitons, and we made that back from selling pitons. And we then invested the money to do picks. And as long as we have the support that makes those funds back and keeps selling and giving us capital to do more R&D, then the organic community backing is hopefully going to carry Beartooth into the future, because the more we get support, the more cool gear people are going to get. And we're saying that the community is going to do that for us because they want better.
As I mentioned earlier, Paul and Charlie are giving away a pair of either the Ice Hawks or Master Scratchers. So here's how to enter. You heard the question earlier. Once you have the answer, follow Beartooth Alpine at Beartooth Alpine and Ice Beta on Instagram. DM the answer to the question to us, Ice Beta on Instagram. Comment on the giveaway post, #DoNotConform, once you've sent in your answer. You can share the giveaway post to your story for an extra entry. And again, winners will be randomly selected from submissions that meet all the rules on Monday, December 2nd. If you're just itching to get your hands on a pair of picks, you can scratch that itch by going to beartoothalpine.com, and you can check out their specialty picks and their beaks.